Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue. The holidays are almost upon us, so I thought we'd do a little MeshOp magic to do a cutting animation like this. In this case, wrapping paper. So, gonna use like some just basic MeshOps in the stack here, a sort of an edge split and a vertex merge and some falloffs, and a couple of deformers on there as well to get this paper sort of bending and curling effect and sort of splitting effect there. So it's a good tutorial, again, if you're just sort of getting into MeshOps and wondering how it can be useful for animation versus just modeling. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. I'm just going to Control N for a new scene and start at the bottom. So let's get our paper, right? And I'll just do a cube mesh operation to start off. So add operator, we'll do a cube. Maybe I'll just kind of keep this over here so we can watch this happen here. So we have a cube, and I'm going to pop up my mini properties with spacebar and just go 0 and Y, make it a plane. Might be nice just to have a plane mesh up as well, actually. So segments, let's make it pretty dense, 64 by 64. And that's it. So now we've got a plane here with quite a few segments. And let's get on with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to split some vertices. We're going to keep this as procedural as possible. And then we're going to weld them back together. So what we'll do is add an edge split. So add operations. Let's keep this here. So let's just do edge split like this. And the cool thing here is we've got a gap, right? So we can put in like something big, like 5 millimeters. You can see it's kind of big. And this is actually set up with Omnihall already, so you can just left mouse click and sort of, whoops, just sort of drag that if you want to. So I think, you know, something like decent wide, like maybe 2 millimeters, like that will be good. And then we're going to add a vertex merge on top of that. And the vertex merge is going to have a distance of about 2 millimeters, maybe make it like 2.5 millimeters, just to like kind of, it's just gonna like pull them all back together. Okay, so now let's get in there and sort of play with some selections and get that sort of cutting strip down the middle. On edge split, we're gonna do a selection, and to keep this, you know, procedural, instead of just sort of, you know, selecting my edges like that, like double clicking and selecting an edges right down the middle. This is an advanced viewport. It's kind of hard to see the selection. There we go, like that. We're going to do a procedural selection. So I'll just keep this in wireframe for now. And I'm going to, let me just rename this guy to paper. I'm going to press N for a new mesh, empty mesh, and I'm going to call this volume. And we're going to use this for our selection. So I'm just going to, I'll just do just a regular cube over here in direct modeling, turn on my grid. And we're just going to select these guys in the middle. So I'm just going to try to pull out my cube like this and make it a little bit thick. And then we can just sort of center it. You can also just center it over here with mini props. I could just make it in the middle and make sure the position is zeros all the way around, like so. Whoops, position 0, like that. And yeah, looks pretty good. Sort of make it a little bigger, I guess. Resize from center is always a good one to do, but we just want to like enclose that first line in there, right? So I'm looking at it from above, and I just go to wireframe again, turn off the grid. I just want this middle guy here, right? And so this little volume I just created, it just encompasses those edges. And I can hide that now and go back over to our paper. And for edge split, let me turn off vertex merge. I'll just go back to advanced here. So I'm going to do an add a selection operation and go to new. And under selection assemblies, there's one called select by volume. And so this is kind of confusing because you have these selection operations here, which are these, I guess I would call them hard-coded, you know, selection operations. And then we have these selection assemblies, which basically use a lot of those selection operations in an assembly to do things like select ingons or edges by angle, or just sort of parameter-based selection. And those are actually assemblies that are combined into, you know, sort of just assemblies built in the schematic that are, you know, boiled down to these these assemblies you can just load in from the preset browser here. And you can make your own too, but these are ones that ship with MODO. There's one called select by volume. We'll just double click that. And then we will go to the source, and select by volume is going to be, of course, that volume mesh we made. And so we'll just go to existing. This is looking at the existing items in the scene. We're going to select our volume. You can see now the only thing split is that one down the middle. So anything encompassed by this. And so if I were to take this guy, let's take this guy, go to wireframe and sort of make it bigger, you'll see these splits happening here. So it's a super useful sort of procedural way to model. Just undo that. And it keeps your selections procedural. So I can go back and if I go back to my paper here and I say, I go to my cube and I change the number of, subdivisions to 32, I still have that selection kept there. So it's a really useful thing. And so I can up-res too. I can go to 128 and keep that selection there. Actually, I have to make my volume just a little bit smaller there. There we go. And yeah, now I'm just selecting in the middle, and I've got 128 subdivisions. So yeah, super useful to use select by volume to keep everything procedural and not doing that select by index, where if I change the number of subdivisions, then I'm going to lose, it's going to kind of mess up my selections, right? Okay, so we'll keep it 64 and move on. So we'll turn on vertex merge. It merges them all back together. And of course, the trick here is we're going to be using a fall off. So under tool pipe, add a new tool, and we're going to add a linear fall off. There we go. Click that guy. And just make sure your toggle locators is on. You want to see locators in the viewport. It's also this little button up here. It should be on Control 1 up in the corner. So all your regular toggles, Control 1 is the best place for those. And we want this to be on the x-axis like this. And we want this to be a lot smaller, like instead of a meter, like maybe 3 millimeters. And you can see it really small down here. But now watch when I animate this. See, now I've got my cutting animation, right? So it's just going to keep everything to the left of 100% merged and everything to the right through this little gradation here unmerged. And that's how we're going to be doing our cutting animation. Now, when we animate this going across, we just have to sync that up to our knife going across as well. So we'll just move this back here. And I may actually create a sort of master locator just to parent everything to. So why don't I do that? I'm going to create a locator and call this master loc. And we're going to parent our fall off to that guy. Actually, before I parent the fall off to that guy, let me just move the locator sort of towards the edge here and give this a better shape. Perhaps we'll do, so you can go over here to, for the locator, you can go over here to add draw options, and we can create a shape here, or down here under display, so we can add, pull this up a little bit. Under the locator, we can change our shape here to a custom shape. I use this little kit called Ateria Quick Locators. I mention this all the time. There's a good review on Pixel Fondue. Every MODO user should have this installed. It's just really quick for just picking a shape, right? So let's just pick a shape. We'll put it on X. We'll make it not filled. We can actually make this filled, actually. We'll just do like blue and blue for the colors, maybe a little bit darker on the inside. And we'll make this really small, like 0.01, 0.01, like that. And so there's our locator. We could make that a little bit bigger, I guess. And we'll just parent everything to that. So this guy is at a position. One thing we could do if we want to match our position of our fall off. So we're gonna, instead of animating our fall off, right, we're gonna animate our locator. So let's get our fall off, parented to our locator in the same position. So what I could do is I could just parent it to the locator like this, and then zero it out like that. So now they're in the same place. And when I grab my locator here, I'm actually let's do actually a circle. I don't really like the. There we go. So there we go. And then when we animate this guy, this locator will just pull our fall off along with it, and there's our cut, right? And so we can also bring in a knife. Maybe I can just bring in the knife from this scene above it really quick. And we'll just, where is my knife? I think it is parented in here. There it is. So let's, there's a couple ways you can do this in MODO. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push this world button here, which puts the knife at the center of the universe. And I'm just going to select those polygons, Control C. You could just drag it into the other scene, but I'm gonna do it this way just to kind of get a clean knife model. Press in for a new mesh item, call it knife, and paste those polygons in there, and there's our knife right there. Okay, and I can actually move it up if I want to, and just have move the polygons up in polygon mode, and have the tip right there on this dot right here is the pivot. So we can go like that. Looks good, and then I'm just going to parent this knife item in item mode. I'm going to parent this to the master loc, just like I did the others, and zero out the position. So there we go. And now again, when I move the locator, it brings the knife along with it, right? So whoops, it's just up just a little bit. Oh, I accidentally sub-D'd the knife. Sometimes when you hit tab by accident, you'll sub-D something. So maybe move the knife down just tiny bit and a tiny bit forward so it's in that cutting. I'm actually gonna go to my draw options here and turn off the fill. We'll just keep it a circle there. Part of the problem in doing these videos in advanced viewport, which I think looks the best, it just anti-aliases everything into oblivion, and when I do these videos, you can't see anything. So there's our locator there, and all I just need to do is animate this locator, and I can animate this whole cutting motion, right, all at once. So we'll just start over here, and maybe frame 5, we'll shift W to create a keyframe, and then frame 145, we'll just move it all the way across, and it just auto create a keyframe there. So there we go. If I want to look at the curves real quick, we can, instead of slowing down, we can just change this. Let's actually press this little curve button here. This little looks like a curve. It'll just show the animated channels. I want to look at X, and instead of like starting slow and then slowing down at the end, normally it would kind of speed up along the way. So we're just going to kind of go and gradually speed up and cut across. Looks good. So yeah, there we go. Now we just have to do a couple more things. So we can add some deformers on here to sort of get them to split apart, some rotations, and little bends to curl the edges, add some materials procedurally. That's about it though. So, I'll just start off maybe by doing some rotation deformers. So those are going to be pretty easy to set up. So here we've got this guy, and I'm actually going to start way at the end here so we can see this little gap in the middle. And I'm going to add a rotation deformer. So just rotation effector, just like that. This is like a transform effector, but it just does rotation. So they're actually kind of useful. So it operates the same way. If we look at it in the schematic, again, if you're sort of new to how MODO works, this is how deformers work in the schematic. Whoops, we've got a new workspace here, workspace, and then drag the rotation effector down here. And so what the rotation deformer is it consists of 3 parts. One is the paper mesh, is the points we're affecting. This one here, the rotation, is called the influence. It tells, it takes a mesh as an input, and it tells the effector, which is usually some sort of handle, like a bend handle, or in this case, a locator to do rotations. It tells it which points on the mesh to affect. So it can affect the entire mesh. It can use just a weight map. It can use a material or a part or a polygon selection set or a vertex selection set. We're going to set it to the entire mesh. And it also brings in a fall off. So there's a vast amount of control in the influence that'll tell MODO, which points, or tell the effector which points to affect, right? And so we're going to do the whole mesh, but we're also going to do a linear fall off to just affect one side of this. So we're going to add a fall off. We're going to do a new fall, and this is one thing I think is going to be fixed in the upcoming MODO version is it won't default to the existing, it'll default to new. So I have a linear fall off. I want a new one. I don't want to use the existing one in the scene. I want to make sure I pick a new one. So we have a new fall off in the scene. And again, it's facing the right direction, but we are just going to make this much smaller. So we'll just do 0.001 for the range. So it's really little. Let me just come into the top here. So what we're doing is everything above this, where it's 100%, is going to be affected by the rotation effector, which is right here, right? So you can see it right here is the effector, and it's also in the item list rotation effector. So I'm going to go above. And right now, if I start rotating this, you can see it's going to just affect that top part, right? Because it's just taking this little fall off into account. And it's just everything north sort of this like straight line is 100%. And so it's going to just move, you know, everything above this cut. What we don't want is it to be right in the middle, though. We don't want the rotation effector to be at the origin. We want it down here at the end so it can sort of, you know, bend the papers apart. So I'm going to go to setup mode, and I'm going to look above it, and oh, this is one of those things. This is sort of annoying. Because our cube is in setup mode, our cube is a mesh operation. Setup mode is prior to any mesh operations or deformers existing sort of in the MODO universe. It's sort of a special mode for rigging, and it lets you place things before this whole stack gets assembled. So we can't see our cube. I actually didn't take that into consideration when I used a cube instead of just polygons, or used a MeshOp cube instead of just polygons. That's fine. We're smart enough to figure this out. We just want it kind of right here, which is a 1 meter cube. So right around negative 0.5 on X is where we want it. So again, I just want my rotation effector selected, and we'll call this rotation effector left, sort of the left. I guess if you're looking at it in perspective, it's sort of the left side here. And we'll go into setup mode, and we're just going to drag this down here to like negative 0.5 on X, and we'll just cheat it a little bit on Z and pop back out. And now it defaults to being down here, and when we rotate, we get that splitting part, like sort of like splitting look that we want instead of it rotating from the middle. So, you know, moving locators and effectors into setup mode where you want them is really crucial to them performing the way you want them to. In fact, there's another way to do it, which I'll show on this next one. So let's, again, I'm going to change this locator, and we'll just change it to a little, maybe a little square on Y, not filled, green, and kind of small, like maybe 0.1 or 0.1 on both of these. So there we go. It's just this little green guy there, and we're going to do the same thing for this side. So again, I'm going to add a rotation deformer. There we go. And we're going to add a fall off to this one as well. So we want a new, not one in the scene already. Also, it helps to like name these. Like this linear fall off, we'll call it linear fall off merge, linear fall off, right? That one's for the vertex merge. And then this one, I also always like to move my camera and light to the top of the list just to get them out of the way. The second one here is going to be rotation effector left linear fall off. So rot left linear fall off. And then we're going to add a new one for rotation right linear fall off. So we'll put that here. We'll make sure we call this rotation effector right. And this is rotation right linear fall off. Housekeeping is important. And we just made this really small, like a millimeter, right? Is that what we made it? Yeah, millimeter. And yeah, so let's just go up here and take a look at it. So we are just going to, we can just click invert on this one if we want, or we can rotate it, 180 degrees if we want to. That's fine. And move it down just a tad. And again, it's going to affect everything on this side of it, right? Anything south of that straight line is going to get 100%. So that means this rotation effector right here, the second one, the right one, which is now, it's in the middle, but we want to move it down here right now. It's going to affect this side, right? So here's something that's fun. You can actually move this down where we want it. So sort of a negative 0.5 and just cheat it to the right a little bit. And then you can right click and say apply to setup rest value. And what that'll do is it'll apply that channel value to the setup rest value. So if I go to setup, now it's there. So it's another way of doing it. So instead of going to setup and moving it, we can just move it to where we want to and then apply that to the setup position. So that's a really useful sort of trick in MODO you can use to do that. So again, let's just change this to just another little green square. I can't remember what I call this, 0.1, I think. Whoops, 0.1.1. I really wish we could just do presets for these. I just like to right click. You know, you could probably do it with these channel presets. I should actually look into doing that because it'd be much nicer just to pick, you know, pick your locator shape from a drop down than to do, even with this nice little kit, it's sometimes better to do that. Anyway, okay, so we can, now we can rotate this side and we can rotate this side. And we'll just do that. We'll just sort of animate the rotation as this goes. So as it starts getting, you know, halfway down, I'm just going to select them both, Shift E to put a couple of keyframes there. And as it gets to the back, then I'm just going to adjust these a little bit and it'll auto key. So just make these split apart a little bit like that. And now when we cut, it'll start pulling apart, right? And if it, like, it's a little late there, so I'll just switch that up. One thing you can do is you can just select both of these guys, you know, and it'll show up in the, you just drag this bottom part, whoops, grab both these guys, both these effectors, and you just drag this up to get, you can drag it all the way up to get this dope sheet, and you just grab these guys and you just drag them to the left. Here it says the C is for combined. Like, William has done some good fun in 30 seconds on these, I think. If I unclick this, you'll see both of these are here. Like, now we've got both of these, but sometimes it's nice to have all your objects and channels combined. So I can just see that, you know, these two items have keyframes here. I want to move them there, right? I don't need to look at all the individual stuff. I just know I want these moved over. And then I could just, you know, test this out. Hit play. That one's looking a lot smoother. So what we are bumping into a little bit, though, is as it's going, we're spreading out those middle points a little bit, and so we're getting kind of a weird motion there. So I don't think we want it quite that way. And one way we could actually fix this is let's do this. So I'm going to grab my rotation fall off here, and this one I just want to make it a little, just want to adjust these like this, right? So they're just a little above 0 and a little below 0. There we go. Now we're not getting those points caught up in that rotation. That middle row of points isn't being grabbed by those fall-offs. I had them a little close to that center line, and it was sort of affecting them a little bit. Not 100%, but a little bit. We're getting a little bit of movement there on the rotation. But yeah, this looks pretty good. Probably too much on both of these. On the rotation values, so maybe just move these down just a little bit. Again, so pressing, if I just grab these guys, sometimes you might not get them loading in the channel. Just press Z, it'll load all animated channels into the graph. So Shift Z will select all animated items, and just Z will load all animated channels. So those are two really good keyboard shortcuts to know. And again, you have so many channels here. I like to just have this little icon selected here, the little curve. So I just look at what's animated, and I'm sort of smushing up all my room here. Let me just bring this one down a little bit. Pop that back up, that's fine. Okay, so I'm just sort of fine-tuning the animation, but I think that's good enough. I think you get it. And if we want to do a bend, it's kind of the same thing. So I can, again, I'll just go back to here, and let's do a bend fall off. We can put that back down. So on top of this, we can do a bend, and it operates the same way. We've got a bend of influence, we've got a bend effector, and we've got, you know, the bend geometry going in. So the bend influence will just the same way. We want entire mesh, but we're going to use a fall off. And this time we're going to use an existing fall off. So I'm just going to add fall off. And I'm going to use the same one we're using for the rotation ones, right? So we'll use this first one here for the left side. And for our bend, we want to make sure it's laying down on X. And then we want to move it into position, something like this. Actually, I think we want it, this is actually an interesting one. If we put it on the opposite, so we're dealing with this side, this top side, but we put it on the opposite side and sort of rotate it, and then press C for channel haul. If your channel haul controls aren't coming up, just go Alt Tabs, load default, it'll load those channel haul tabs back up, and that way we can get our bending on channel haul there. Now these aren't split yet, so let me just go to the end of the animation here. So you can see how it's, if you move it to the opposite side and rotate it, you can get that sort of a better looking bend on it, you know, like that. Something like that. I'd probably move it this way a little bit, and we're not going to be bending it that much, so press C again to get channel haul and adjust our bend amount. Or you can adjust down here as well if you want to, but you know, we're just bending it a little bit, something like that. That's probably way too much still, but something along these lines. You can also lower our length and radius with the middle mouse button, so we can just sort of get that. You can see that handle there. We just want it to encompass the edge there, but that's, yeah, that's good enough. Okay, that's fine. And then we'll do one more, add another bend, and we'll just add a new fall off here. We'll take the right side this time, and then let's grab our effector, and same thing. We want it in on X. I'm just using mini props here, and length, and yeah, looks good. So we'll just move that to kind of this side. Whoops. Want Y0. Grab the little planer handle there. It'd be better off than doing what I just did. Rotating it around. You can't see it. I'm just sort of rotating it into position here and moving it forward like this, kind of like that. And then you can kind of see that, you know, bending there. Okay, looks good. Something like that. It could be offset a little bit. It'll have to be exactly the same. Put them both 0 for now, and then we'll just sort of animate them like we, you know, did the rotation, just to get a bit of a curl on it. So, you know, maybe when it starts getting around here, we'll grab both these effectors and select angle, press S for set key. Again, you can see it right there. Go forward, kind of to the end, set another key, and then we'll also just press C for channel haul and bend these guys up just a little bit like this. We can also add another effector if we want to, or another fall off falling from the center to the side, which I think I'm actually going to do. So I think I actually did that on the animation I showed earlier. So let's, I'm actually going to get a little better lighting in this viewport. So let me go to my environments. Again, I'm using channel presets here. There's a good MODO tutorial on this in Pixel Fondue where I've just got some presets in here for like sky and, you know, Maya and Houdini backgrounds. You know, they just change this gradient. So I go to sky. It's going to look a little nicer in the viewport here, I think. And yeah, so let's add another fall off. Let's blend some fall offs together so the bend just affects sort of these corners here, not so much over here. Right now we're getting too much bend, I think. We just kind of want it curling on the corner here. So I'm going to do a fall off going this way, right? And I'm going to blend those together. So let's bring up my schematic. And let's make a little room here. I'll bring over this first bend that's doing this side and add it to the schematic. And don't need my environment material in there. Is that still selected? Yes. Deselect MODO. Come on. So, you know, here we've got, what it's doing is it's using the same fall off, right? Both this rotation and this bend are using the same fall off to make that initial selection of just, you know, all of these guys, right? But we want to modify that with an additional linear fall off to go, you know, from the center to the edge. So I'm actually going to unhook this real quick, and you see it's kind of grabbing everything. And I'm going to, for fall offs, I'm going to add a blend fall off. So we'll just do it right here in the schematic. We're going to blend fall off. like that. We're going to pop that into the fall offs there. And then this looks at multiple fall offs. So we want the initial fall off right here to just select that side. And then we're going to add another linear fall off. So add linear fall off, adding a new one here. And this guy, let's just, you know, make sure we're keeping up with our housekeeping and name it. We'll call this left side bend fall off. And we'll just get this into position. So it looks, you know, let's rotate it 180 degrees. Like so. Let me look at it from above, and then press C for channel haul, middle mouse, just to smooth it down. So this is going to, you know, have most of the effect here, and it's going to gradually go away as it goes down the end. And this guy is just going to be multiplied against this guy, right? So let's just put it in here and stack it into the fall offs. If you twirl this down, you'll see we've got one above and one below, right? And so this is just read from the bottom up, like everything else in MODO. And we want to make sure this is set, instead of add, we want it to go to multiply. All right, that's not bad. Let me just tweak this a little bit. I don't want to turn this to like the make it perfect tweaky tutorial. I just want everybody to kind of know how to do this stuff. So let me move this way just a little bit. And move my handle just a little bit here. Let me actually rotate this way. Actually, that's a little better if I rotate it this way. I think I had that sort of opposite. So something like that is a decent bend amount, and we just have to sort of get the animation right. So let me just drag this down. So as we're cutting, it's sort of lifting and bending. And we can maybe do a little more. That's kind of a lot, maybe 25. Yeah, I think that's about right. May start bending a little bit earlier. Okay, looks good. And then we just do the same thing for the other side. Again, we're just go to the schematic, and we're just going to drag in our second bend here, add selected. We can see we've got this fall off, right? The right rotation fall off, but we're going to unhook it, and we're going to add a blend fall off there and hook that up. Rehook up this guy to the blend fall off, the original one that selects just the side, and then we'll do our second fall off, which, you know, sort of gradiates it towards the end, and that'll go in just above it. Twirl that down to make sure it's above. Make sure this is in multiply mode, and then let's get our handle sort of fixed for the second one. Make sure in item mode. I sort of have my initial rotations opposite there. I want something like that, right? It's funny how I used to think 1080 by 1920 was such a huge amount of space when I was younger and I worked in standard definition, which was 720 by 480 pixels. Recording these at 1080 by 1920 by 1080, there was like very little room to work in MODO. Should maybe bump this up to the full 1440 or something like that. So anyway, this is looking pretty good. Let me just up that angle a little bit there, and you could sort of tweak it all you want. The second linear fall off, press C for channel haul, middle mouse down that range. See how that range is pulling that side down a little bit. And then go in, let's change our little curvature fall offs here to be more of a airplane takeoff, right? So you can see how we're shaping the fall off there with this, or shaping the deformation there with this fall off tweak. If you watch Rich Hurry's tutorials and a lot of the stuff he does with Ozone, this is where he does his sort of magic a lot, is in, you know, being able to adjust these influences, the influence on points using these curves and fall-offs versus weight maps, right? So going there and painting weights and then adjusting weights and then readjusting weights, that sucks. But doing this, that's awesome. Or interactively adjusting our weighting, right? So this is like a huge MODO. And then being able to combine that with weights and other fall-offs. It's like, you know, MODO is super undervalued in terms of what it can do with rigging. It's a little slow. Got that. It's a little slow, but it's super undervalued, I think. So, okay, I think we're about done with this. The second bin defector, I just need to, move the, we just need to start this a little bit earlier in the game, so they both start. They don't have to be perfectly aligned. They'll play a little more natural if they're offset a little bit. And I'm just right mouse clicking here. So remember, in the graph editor, right mouse, left, right, time, middle mouse, up, down, value. So it's super fast way of just adjusting your stuff. So I'm just right mouse, and I have a tablet, so it's very gestural, very like intuitive. I just want this offset just a little bit. All right, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. So that's about it. We can set some real quick materials on here. We can also do this procedurally. So we just do add operator, and we do material tag. So material tag like that. And there's a couple ways. We'll just do, so we'll just call this wrapping paper. Actually, before I do that, let's do a thicken. I'll just keep that there, but let's do a little bit of a thicken. Paper is a little bit thick, even though it's a very tiny amount. We'll do a thicken, and you can just move this down just a very, very tiny bit, just a little bit of thickness, right? And then we'll use that thicken to do our materials, right? So we want a material tag above thicken, because we're going to use a selection operation, a select by previous operation, which is, again, is the most powerful selection operation in MODO. And I'm happy to say there's going to be a lot more select by previous options coming in future versions of MODO. The developers have been really good listening to a group of beta testers saying, hey, we need more options here. When I create like a cylinder, I need to be able to select the top or the bottom or the sides, as a select by previous. All the tagging should be done. So anything further down the stack, I should be able to, select something from that operation. In this case, we're going to say we want to look at our thicken operation, and I just want the front, and we're going to set a material on those guys. So we'll call this the paper, and then just go over here into our shading group. Now, when you create a material tag, it does not automatically create a mask in the shading group here, or the shader tree here. So we have to do it manually. So we say add a group, and inside our group, we just want to pick a material tag. We'll find it here, paper, and then we're going to add a material into that group, and I'm just going to make it red or something really quick so we can see it. There we go. There's red. White is the sort of default, but let's add a back of and side of paper 1, 2. So again, we're just going to add a material tag like this, and again, we're just going to do some procedural selection here. So this time we're going to do a select by polygon tag, and we're going to select the tag one is material, and we're going to select paper, yep. And then we're going to do an invert on that. So just invert the selection, and we'll call this paper back, or paper back. That's what we want. This first one's paper, second one paper back, right? Okay. So paper back, and then again, just to show you this works, I'll make this like blue or something, green, something like that. And you can see, there we go. So now we've got procedural paper and everything else. So if you're getting any weird deformations, here we can see we're getting a bit of a dent there. It's pretty easy to troubleshoot. Just sort of start turning off your stack and then slowly turning things back on. Let me hide the grid and the locators there. So this looks pretty good. Turn on a rotation. Just fine. The second rotation, just fine. Bend, which I think is the culprit. Boom, we're getting a bit of a deformation there we don't want. And I think I know why. I think it's just because the bend handles. Can I change these handle colors? That sure would be nifty. Let's do something like cyan. There we go. Now I can see them. So yeah, these guys are just they're just too far back, right? So we need to really move them forward a little bit and change our length there like that. Do this guy too. Move it forward a little bit. Change our length, and we're not going to get that bending effect where the bend is outracing. The influence is sort of outracing the knife. So we don't want it to start bending before the knife gets there. So there we go. That looks good. Turn on our second bend. Kind of check close up again. Yeah, I think that looks good. One of the things I did on the other one is I did a little magnet effector in there just to get a little push down there. So we can just add a magnet effector as well. So I'm just going to add a quick little magnet effector. These are totally underutilized. They're super useful in MODO. So let's just take a quick look here. That's way too big. First of all, we want a couple things. We want this set to repulse, and we want it up a little bit, and we want it way smaller. So just, again, just C for channel hall, and let's get our range down. Kind of see what we're doing here, right? So we just want it to repulse just a little bit, and we want it sort of right there on the knife. So it's just pushing down a little where the knife edge is pushing down. And you can just, you know, get that set up, and I'm just going to parent it, right? So now it'll just travel along with that locator, and we'll see that sort of little bit of a bend, a little bit of a magnet push happening right there as the knife is pushing. And you can also, this responds to scale tools as well, so you can scale it like this just to kind of get those vertices right there affected. There you go, right? Turn back my materials on. Actually, I probably want my magnet to be first before rotation and bend, so we'll just drag it down in the stack. Again, pretty awesome. MODO, it's just order of operations. You know, just rearrange it really easily. And yeah, I think we're done. Add some Christmas paper or whatever, Hanukkah paper, any kind of paper, and we are good to go. Turn on our red there. So yeah, there we go. There is a little bit of a cutting animation in MODO using MeshOps, showing MeshOps are available for animation, not just modeling.
Yum, yum!